Final hour overdrive continues, powered by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. We'll get to our best bets later in the hour. Danny Briere coming up, GM of the Flyers at 6:30. John Tortorella is fully committed to a sweater on the bench. Like, he had the zip up yesterday, fully zipped. Like, he doesn't even undo the zipper.
Yeah, it's like
behind
a
the bench.
fluffy zip-up thing.
Yeah, it's like a...
But there's no suit.
A Columbia, like...
Yeah, one of those
Patagonia.
Yeah, it's like après ski. The guy's in the lodge having a beer behind the bench.
And the other coaches have just followed on, like they're on board.
Yeah.
Patagonia. Is that what it is?
Patagonia. That's a big one, too. Yeah,
that's what he has.
That's what he's got on.
I don't
mind Flyers
that.
Patagonia.
Why does he need to wear a suit? He could wear a tracksuit.
I just couldn't take it seriously. I need my coach to come in a suit. Pat Quinn, he'd come in with the suit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but there are some coaches that they look like the suits are tough. Like,
well, Berube's not.
But he's got good suits.
He does, but Craig's wearing it's pretty standard colors. It's not loud or anything like that.
But that's him in a nutshell.
Totally.
Just look good. But I bet you in a candid moment, if you said to him, you want to wear a tracksuit on the bench? He'd probably say yes.
Do you think Berube would prefer to wear that? Do you think every coach in the league would prefer to wear a tracksuit?
I don't. I think they would want to go suit. One of the funniest moments is when Pat would come in with the suit on. He'd never have the jacket on for the pregame speech. And if this guy dropped his pen, dude, he did a straight-legged bend over with a groan. Guys, I'd have to cover my jersey up because if I looked at Caber or Tux, I couldn't do it. Yeah. I couldn't do it.
I think there are some coaches that they look like they just crawled out of a dumpster with a suit on.
Oh, yeah. There's some of them that...
Some it's like wrinkly or whatever. Like, I love a lot. Like, remember Dale Hunter? I think he had like one suit.
One suit. He wore the same suit every single time with like a gray shirt and a black tie.
But that's
Loved
he just
it. Yeah.
Our boy Brucey Boudreau liked a pretty relaxed.
Brucey can wear a relaxed
dress
jacket
code.
Dude, I remember we did a show down at the rink and Brucey was running morning skate from the bench with his running shoes on. He didn't even go on the ice. You remember that?
That was great. Those are the old school coaches. They're like,
we got to figure out if he ever used a whistle. Like, would he, or was he just kind of barking out instructions?
That's a good question.
Because he was not on the ice, but he was running the show from the bench.
It was always weird when you'd see that with NHL coaches that wouldn't update their gear.
Yeah.
You know, like they'd wear the
Pat
old...
would wear Micron Mega black. Dude, they were plastic. They would squeak when he walked onto the ice.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Like, that's the head coach of the richest team on earth. If he said, hook me up with a new pair.
No, his skates, I remember now, they were called Langs.
Langs.
Black plastic Langs.
Right, with probably a wooden stick or a stick with no tape on it.
Yeah,
that was always the best.
Are like he could have had a new pair of skates every day.
Absolutely.
That he coached for the league.
Happily, the team would have been like, yes, what do you need, Pat? We'll bake them for you. What do you need? We will make sure these are so dialed in for you.
I'm going with black Langs.
Yeah.
I had a coach.
Old school stick, old school gloves with like no... Remember guys wouldn't have palms in their
the
gloves?
palms would be ripped
out.
out.
So you could clutch and grab. So greasy back in the day.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Jimmy Roberts, our assistant coach in St. Louis, he had like these gloves that had tape on them. Like they weren't hockey gloves. It was gloves with tape.
Yeah.
And he'd wear like a hat with a pom-pom on it. That was his coaching.
Got his job done, man.
Unbelievable.
But coaching from
those are Pat's skates right there.
Wow.
With the tube blade.
Yeah. But
that's crazy.
I'm pretty sure he even had the black plastic blade.
The molded blade.
Yeah,
that's
the
what
whole
it was.
thing.
Yeah, the molded blade. But those Langs were old school. I remember my brothers had them growing up. Like that's
electric stuff, man. Like you don't see that anymore.
No.
Like there's just certain things that you can't find.
You couldn't find those anywhere.
No, they don't make that kind of stuff.
We've got Danny coming on. Are we going to ask him about the Torts dress code? Like,
I think we got to ask him because they're in a good. They were in a great place last year.
Yeah,
good place. They're in the mix.
Yeah,
John's an old school guy, and he's like, I'm rocking the Patagonia behind a bench.
You know what else I love? Did you see the translation of the Michkov? Like he came out and talked about Tortorella and his relationship because he's like, I can't talk to him because he talks to him through a translator. But he's like, Tortorella, I like him. He's always been honest with me, straight shooter. Like it was actually a really nice statement. I wonder if it was written by him or not.
Right. Torts is like, hey, make sure you But that's what all the players say. Like Frankie played for me. He's like, straightest shooter, like was honest with you. You wouldn't always like what he said.
You know where you stand.
He'd tell you what's going on.
Yeah.
Exactly. Danny Briere later in the hour. And Al's brother Clue coming up as well. But here's Chris Johnston, our TSN hockey insider, joining us here on the Maple Toyota hotline. CJ, in terms of the game at the Bell Center tonight, you got Montreal on a heater. In Vancouver, they are in a bad spot, in a bad position. Which storyline, which team is more compelling for you?
It's probably got to be the Canucks, I think, just because, everything going on, beyond the games for them, it goes without saying. There's been a lot of trade speculation, discussions about the state of their dressing room. And then on top of that, it sounds like Quinn Hughes will try to play tonight, but, Elias Pettersson isn't expected to. Thatcher Demko's out. I mean, they're hobbling into that arena, and it's a tough week for Vancouver. I mean, they play tonight, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday here in Toronto. I mean, it's 4 games in 6 days in the East, and they need to get some wins together. December was a tough month in the standings for them, and as they try to keep the band together, I'm just fascinated by what we're going to see on the ice tonight.
So, CJ, you doing your due diligence, do you hear a lot of rumblings around Vancouver as far as, potential trades or them shopping players? Or I'm sure teams are calling, willing to lend a hand for pennies on the dollar.
Well, absolutely. And, there's certainly been a lot of conversation there. And I think I think they're seriously looking at the possibility of moving one or both of Elias Pettersson and JT Miller. Not to say it's definitely going to happen, but the fact that they're having those kind of discussions, I think you're right to say a lot of it, is teams seeing what's going on in the media, reading the tea leaves, and then trying to suss out what might happen. But it's been a kind of a crazy few weeks for the Canucks. Even heading into the holiday break, and they got to make some decisions for their team too. It's not just about 2 players. I think that the entire thing has had a lot of impact on everyone in the organization, and they're still a team that's trying to have a great year that has high hopes. That was in the second round of the playoffs, Game 7 last year, and so it's maybe a little too soon to say where it's going to go, but there's certainly a lot of trade conversations, and they're kind of at the nexus of it because they obviously have some pretty talented players that they're at least listening on, if not trying to move.
So, CJ, let me just, for clarification, they've had the coming to Jesus moment where they've said, you guys need to figure it out, whether that be Quinn Hughes or Jimmy Rutherford and Alvin. Like, they've had that where they're like, figure this out because we're too good a team and you guys are too good of players, and that just doesn't seem to work.
Yeah, I think that's where they are right now. I mean, look, if we step back from this, the ideal thing probably for Vancouver is not to consider some trade that could blow up in your face with one of your most talented players. The ideal scenario would be, whatever this has been, to be something that maybe they could use as a stepping stone as a team to come together, to find a way to work together, and, play the kind of hockey they did last year when they had 109 points and, a pretty good playoff run, came within a whisker getting to the Western Conference Final. If that doesn't happen, then, the choose your own adventure takes you down paths that, I don't think that they are too excited about but possibly exploring, but, they have to think that way at a management level. So, I don't know exactly how this is going to proceed. I think some of it is results on the ice. I saw, Quinn Hughes, I believe it was, mentioned, like, if we just win some games, everything will quiet down. And I do agree with his assessment. If they can, string together some good hockey, I think, it's a chance to move forward and leave some of these discussion points behind. But, if it keeps going in the wrong direction, there might be something else around the corner.
So we have Danny Briere coming up in 20 minutes, and the Leafs were playing Philly last night. They play in Philly tomorrow, and they're only 2 points out of the playoffs, and it's pretty incredible when you look at the wild card. A little bit deceptive. Tampa's in the first wild card, but they've only played 37 games. Right. So they have a lot of games in hand. I think Tampa will be closer to the Toronto, Florida, Washington, Jersey, Carolina category by the end of things. But Pittsburgh's in that second wild card. They're 17, 17, and 7. Like, Ottawa's 500. Columbus is in it. They're 17, 17, and 6. Montreal's in it now. Philly, Detroit. I guess what I'm getting at is, we're into the new year now. The trade deadline's a couple months away. do all these teams think that they can actually get in? And if so, how does that possibly handcuff the potential for trades to happen?
Well, I think what it might do is it might push off until March 7th, a little closer than in the past, before some teams, declare, whether they're a seller or not, essentially. I mean, I'm not saying those teams are necessarily going to become buyers, even if they're, right on the playoff precipice. But, it might change, what some teams on the line will do, because I think really the way I look at it, it sets up that at least one team in the Eastern Conference is probably going to make the playoffs that most people didn't think was going to make the playoffs entering the season, right? Whether it was, even the Canadians, I mean, I think people expect them to take a step forward, but I didn't see a lot of people outside of Montreal predicting them to be a playoff team, whether it's the Senators, even the Penguins after a couple of years out. If the Blue Jackets got in there, I mean, there's no one on earth outside their dressing room that would have predicted that. And so, there's opportunity there. And I think, if you're a team like the Flyers, and as much as they do have, I think, their eye on the bigger picture, you don't want to be subtracting from that group too soon if you're in Danny Briere's shoes. And so, it's been a different year for trades. We've had more, I'd say, than normal to this point. The fact that we're even talking about guys like Pettersson maybe still being dealt is not an every season occurrence in the league. And maybe we'll end up having kind of a different deadline window if a lot of teams are still in it, because at this point, I think it's pretty clear the trade market, big picture, is still taking shape.
TJ, we were talking about the noise with the New York Rangers, the noise with the Vancouver Canucks, and usually it would seem like that would be a Leaf thing where there'd be noise and it would be ugly and there'd be something goofy going on. Is the quiet kind of vibe in the locker room and on the ice and just the way they're doing business, maybe, I don't want to jinx it, CJ, but maybe just kind of plotting a path forward, like this might be the way to go?
Well, it certainly feels different, doesn't it? And I'm sure those working for the Leafs will still feel like maybe it's been noisier than it needs to be, just because there's always something. But, this season really hasn't had as much, as many ups and downs. I mean, obviously they've dealt with a lot of different injury stuff. The Auston Matthews story, went through November and December, and he's only just returned here with a couple games. So that's been a big talking point. The goaltending, there's been some injuries there. But, I mean, in terms of on the ice, they haven't had as many alarming losses, I would say. Where they're playing really down to their opponents. I mean, every team's going to have some of those, but it felt like more of a hallmark of the teams prior to this season. I think Craig Berube has low-key done a nice job of not, he's direct with the media, but he's rarely, if ever, been the one to start any kind of media fire with something he said about a player. And so, yeah, I think it has been a quieter season. I think it is a different team. I mean, the same main characters, of course, but they're winning in a different way than they have in the past, and we'll see what that means. I mean, still half the season to go here, and the most important half season ahead. Typically teams that have long playoff runs have a pretty strong finish to the year. So there's still some land to be conquered here, but I do think there is a different feel around the Leafs, and certainly hasn't seemed to be as. The market isn't blaring over every little thing because the team's done a really nice job. And look, they're right near the top of the Eastern Conference standings.
What is your understanding of Jake McCabe's status? I know they put him on IR. He took the puck to the head about a month ago. He missed some time. And then obviously an ugly result after the fight last night. What are the Leafs saying? What is the feeling in terms of his status moving forward?
Well, with the IR stint, he's out at least a week, but the sense is it's going to be longer than that. And, with the nature of the injury, he did hit his head on the ice as that fight was wrapping up. But, it's hard to put precise timelines on it. But, I think there's an understanding he's going to be out for the foreseeable future here. And, will really depend on, how he's feeling, what kind of symptoms he has, and all those types of things. But I think there's going to be, a fair amount of caution. You'll remember, Jake took a puck in the side of the head, a month or so ago, and missed 5 games at that point. I don't believe they called it a concussion, but with a suspected head injury or concussion there. And so, given how close this injury is to that one, I think it's probably going to be a couple weeks at minimum, and just hope he feels better sooner rather than later.
With Matthews returning, it caught a lot of us off guard, like outside of the team. I can't imagine it caught the Leafs off guard, but did he basically just show up on Saturday and say, I'm going tonight? Or were they along for the ride and the Leafs were pushing for it? Like, how did it happen where he goes from practicing and not certain when he's going to return to all of a sudden, not only is he back, he plays a back-to-back over the weekend?
Well, certainly they left a lot of the sort of decision-making in his hands, obviously, along with the medical staff, but I think a lot of it was how he felt. And, the real indicator to me that it was possible is, he went to Long Island last week for that game on Thursday. It was a one-game road trip, not one an injured player would typically take, but, did give him a chance to skate then. And then the Leafs sent down Marshall Rafai, I believe, on Friday, which was kind of a tip, because they needed a roster spot to activate Matthews. So I don't think it was a case of showing up Saturday and saying he was in. I think they had a pretty good idea on Friday that he was likely to go, just by the roster moves they made there. And I think for him it's important, as much as, I would expect Craig Berube to manage his minutes a little bit and, try not to put too much on his shoulders. I think Matthews really wants to play every game. And so for him, the fact there was a back-to-back didn't end up being much of a consideration. And it seems like it went pretty well. I think, he looked like he had some explosiveness in his skating stride we haven't always seen at times this season. And obviously the team got a couple wins and he put up some points too.
Do you think he plays in the Four Nations, or what is the plot moving forward with this guy, the plan to kind of get him healthy and make sure he's ready for the playoffs?
I don't think we're going to know that, O-Dog, until late January.
Who would make the call on that, the team or the player? Both, obviously.
I think ultimately it's the player in this case. I mean, the team's going to have its opinion, and I would expect there's, a discussion, but I don't think that they can stop, nor do I believe any team could stop a player from going, this is an NHL event. Again, there'll be opinions, and I think there'll be discussions, and I don't necessarily think this is going to be, a controversial thing. Like, if Auston isn't feeling up to it, I don't think he'll force it. A lot of really the discussion is going to be, what do these next few weeks look like? I mean, it's great to see him play the two games and play the way he did, but how does he come through the next stretch of schedule? Because it doesn't really ever let up for the Leafs the way the season's going. And so, my guess is you're looking late January, early February. Let's assume he plays all the games between then and now, and then there'll be a conversation about what everyone feels is best. But, I would think, given his stature and who he is, it's going to be his call ultimately, to decide to go or not.
Do you get the sense that some managers and maybe some organizations would be fine with their players, we'll call it, opting out or not being available for the Four Nations?
1,000%. I mean, you might even remember years ago when John Tavares was an Islander and he went to Sochi for Team Canada in the Olympics, and I believe he broke his leg there. Yeah. And at the time, the Islanders owner came out and spoke out about it. I mean, this has always been, I know Olympic participation is different than this tournament, but the same principle applies. I mean, every owner wants playoff dates. They want their best players available to sell tickets. And there is risk in any of these tournaments that, players are going to be injured. And so when given the choice between, hey, this guy gets 10 days off from competition or he's got to go play in potentially 4 games. I don't know how emotional those games are going to be yet. To me, that's one of the big, what ifs or one of the thends I'll be watching closely when we get to the Four Nations. But you got to think there's a possibility Canada, U.S. play in a final that ends up being a physical game, and that ends up being a high emotion game. And if that's the case, obviously there's a risk players could be injured and be unavailable down the stretch. That's part of the deal with this thing. But certainly if you're a manager, you probably don't care which country wins. You just want your team to have the best chance to win a Stanley Cup, and some of those things could be changed by what happens there.
All right, CJ, we'll leave it there. We'll do it again next week.
All right, guys. Have a great night.
You got it. Chris Johnston joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Count on Maple Toyota for the right winter tire package for your Toyota. Trade in your old tires, buy a new set, and get $40 back. Visit mapletoyota.com. Yeah, that'll be a topic of discussion between now and that Four Nations. Like, it's going to be nonstop. And there's so many different elements that come into it as well that, these guys haven't played best on best in a long time. There's a business component. If you're thinking about that over the weekend, if you're McDavid, if you're Matthews, these guys have big money endorsements.
Yeah.
And that can't be the priority, but there may be an element to it. We wouldn't mind seeing you at this Four Nations face-off, wearing our stuff and promoting our gear.
It's like any other international event or event like this. There's somebody that's paying a salary to the guy saying, we don't really care How do you think the Islanders felt when John Tavares went to Sochi and blew his knee out?
The whole thing. Listen, the flip side of it is the teams are like, man, this is great, but it's an NHL-run event, so you got a problem with it. Call Gary Bettman.
No, I
talk to your owner.
Hockey-related revenue. It's all of that stuff that's attached to it. But people will look at it differently if Matthews goes and then comes back and.
Oh, there is a risk in that because it's been a full season. Even if he plays great the next month, he's going.
Right.
Like if he is healthy between now and next month, I believe he is going. I would guess that. If he has another setback between now and then, he should immediately announce, that's it, I'm out, I'm done.
You don't need to announce until the day before.
Well, that's the thing, Hayes. Like, what is the likelihood of there being no setbacks from now until then?
Well, let's
it
hope
seems
it's
kind of,
zero.
you hope it's zero, but that seems kind of unlikely.
You can't be at that point based on what he's already gone through this year. Like 3 different times he's had to take himself out of action due to this injury.
Right.
So, I don't know. He doesn't have to give
any general
an answer
manager,
right now.
like what they would be thinking, like a natural feeling would be, as soon as the second incident happened with the Buffalo game, they would say, by the way, don't even think about the face-off thing.
I would think so too. Yet,
but
as CJ said,
big-time players, like this isn't like the seventh defenseman going to the USA.
Exactly, and I'm sure he wants to play. I can totally sympathize for that.
Yeah.
All these guys want to play, and I appreciate that. They want to play.
So
they
do
want to
I,
play for
because
their
they
countries.
didn't want to play in the All-Star game, and I don't blame them because it was terrible.
That would be different, clearly. If it was the All-Star game, I'd be like, this guy's not going out there on the ice. Like, no chance. But this is a different component because you're representing your country.
Yeah.
Which they all want to play, and they all should want to play.
Yeah, but Four Nations is different than the Olympics.
Totally different.
Like, if Matthews skips the Four Nations, Team USA is not giving them the treatment like, well, you didn't show up here. He's playing in the Olympics.
He's different also.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it just, to me, it's if he's available and wants to play in it, great. But I think there are managers, even outside of Auston Matthews, I think there's other teams that would be fine with their players going, I'm going to sit this one out.
For sure.
It's only Four Nations. It's not all of them, too.
Well, and it's short, it's quick, it's a manipulated thing, it's new, there's no history to it. You know, I don't know what to expect. We'll find out when we get there.
Yeah.
All right, Al's brother, somewhere out in the city with a pair of Leaf tickets. You guys ready for the first clue of the week?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, maybe we will.
Howdy, fans. It's a new week, which means we got a new set of tickets to give away. It's Leafs Devils, January 16th. And here is your Monday clue. I'm heading out on holidays this week to celebrate the championship for Team Hazenbro. So the secret spot that I'll be at this week is not even in Toronto. It's not even in Canada, for Pete's sake. So make sure you check back the rest of the week to hear the rest of the clues.
Ooh, Al's brother is taking this contest somewhere out of the country.
He's not even in Canada?
That's outstanding. That's the way it should be. He's not even in Canada. That hat looks phenomenal, doesn't it?
Witness protection program. That's what he looks like.
He does. That's cruise wear for him. He's wearing the Hazenbro championship hat. He said, this is a big icebreaker for me on a cruise.
People stop him and be like, what's that hat?
Yes, I would. And then once they hear the explanation, they'll say, you're a disgusting human being, and I'm leaving.
You got to really like a cruise to go that many times. Like, there's something, I don't know if it's the gambling, the feeding.
He told us he went on
moment, like
off the air, I believe.
Right.
I don't think he cares if this is out there. I think he was on 6 cruises in the 2024 calendar year. I believe that was factual.
That is insane.
6.
Somebody's going.
I don't know.
Somebody's either hitting the slots or they're dumping money in the waiters.
Yeah, I mean
that's buffet.
You got to be getting some sort of invite back because
you're doing something where they want you
they're
back.
Platinum, like the family's platinum club members.
I think that's what it is. I think they're on a first name basis with the captains coming down.
Platinum level of a cruiser.
Yeah. If you go enough and you get a certain package and you dump enough because the casinos run out in international waters. Right. Once they dock, the casino's got to close. So you want to see degenerate behavior.
Yeah.
It's the guy who's like, all right, we're docking. What time are we leaving so I can come back when the casino opens back up? Because once you get, 20 miles offshore or whatever, the second you're in international water, it's a pirate ship. It's a pirate ship. It is. There's casinos. You could do some wild stuff out there. I'm not going to finish my thought, but there's some wild stuff that can happen on international waters.
There's just no jurisdiction.
It's there's nothing. There's no court of law. There's nothing.
So when that thing's docked at Miami, you can't fire up the casino.
No, because then it's different rules and regulations, and there's tax code. There's a lot of different
take that
things.
20 feet into the water.
20 miles
20
in,
miles.
you're in international waters, and it's porkies out there. It's a pirate ship.
Dude, there's
needs
got to
a
be a
reality
cruise
show.
dock.
What he
There's
needs
got to be a documentary on cruise ships.
It sounds as if it's just some of the most wild stuff
People
you've
just
ever experienced
eat
in
and
your
drink,
life.
Eat and drink.
Yeah,
and
it's not that it doesn't cost a ton of money. I don't know how it operates.
all
I don't
inclusive.
know.
I went on an all.
I've never been on one. I have no interest.
Actually, next time we have Struddy on, or if he fills in for me, ask him about. We went on a cruise. The Strudwicks, the McLennans, the Aginlas. There was 4 or 5 families. We all went.
I couldn't do it.
I wouldn't want to do
flew
it.
to
man.
Florida.
Something about I think CC, Chris Cuthbert's mom, got caught on a cruise ship when COVID started.
For like a month?
That's terrifying because there was a ship
She
that was caught
on a
out there.
ship for a month, I think.
Yeah, they wouldn't let it back into the land inland.
How were they living?
Well, I guess they were boating out, food and drink, but they were basically saying COVID's got to run through the whole ship before you can even come out. And there was an issue with also because it wasn't all Americans on there, so they're like, once you get off, you got to get out. How are we going to get you out of here?
Dude, I'm
it was
grabbing
complicated.
I'm grabbing a dinghy, and I am not staying on a boat.
That's my concern is you get out there and something happens, and someone's got an illness or something, and they're like, we got to dock.
It was.
Or we're stuck out here.
Can you imagine
It's
Al's
nightmare.
brother yelling at the top of his lungs, "Iceberg right ahead!"
in a Hazenbro hat.
and he's
yeah.
just crippled on the.
He's
90
he's Kate
degrees
Winslet
outside.
at the front of the boat. That's what he is.
Yeah, it's exactly what it would be. All right, Danny Briere coming up. We'll ask Danny about the Four Nations face-off, how he feels about it as a GM. Right, Travis Sanheim will be there.
Yep.
Travis Sanheim will be there. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, best bets later in the hour. Got another really cool giveaway starting today. We'll tell you about that. You don't see too many home and homes anymore, man. You got the Leafs, Philly last night. Now they're in Philly tomorrow night. Old school. Used to see that all the time. It was the best.
Would get a little greasy too.
Get very greasy. Might get greasy tomorrow night. You
Especially
never know.
when it's like the very next night. Like
Yes.
traditional back-to-back.
Old school, like Friday, Saturday night.
Yeah.
Those were greasy.
Danny Briere would have been a part of a few of them.
Oh, yeah. Well, when Danny was playing for Buffalo, for sure, like Buffalo, Toronto, they used to play Friday, Saturday all the time.
A war.
Right? Philly, Pittsburgh, I'm sure there were a bunch of those. So the Leafs are in Philly playing the Flyers tomorrow. Let's head down there. Here's the GM of the Flyers. Here's Danny Briere. How you doing, Danny?
Hey guys, you're right about that. It's the home and home are always pretty intense. I kind of miss those home and home. It's a little bit of a feel of a short playoff series almost.
Yeah.
Danny, are you getting ready to say goodbye to your nice black hair? Because it seems like when everybody goes into a management position or coaching, they're like gray within 3 years. Why is it the stress level of that position as opposed? Is it more stressful than playing, or what is it about the position where guys have gray hairs within 3 years?
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's way more stressful than playing. Because when you're playing, you're under control. You can control whatever you have to do. You get ready for a game and you go through your routine and you get on the ice and you know what you have to do. Nowadays, you're at the mercy of the players on the ice, and it's a lot more stressful. Believe me, the grays are coming out. I've seen a lot more popping up lately.
Danny, we were talking about in the last hour Torts and his whole body of work, but also his wardrobe. At some point, when did it morph into the? What is it? The zippy
I'm going
behind
with
the sweater,
The Patagonia
zippy,
behind
like
the bench.
Patagonia. Like, is it just is now the coaching and the dress code there? Kind of everybody comfortable and just warm because it looks like he's freezing all the time.
Yeah. And if you remember before, he had the jacket, but he always had the sweater underneath. And,
Right.
And we had the talk, and he was asking if we could change it up. My only request was that our coaching staff looked the same. I didn't want one guy with a sweater, one guy with a jacket, one guy with a suit. I said, as long as you guys all look the same and look professional, I thought that was a good idea. And those guys are a lot more comfortable behind the net, behind the bench. I was thinking about it too. Like these poor guys, sometimes they're sitting there 82 games for 3 hours behind the bench, barely sitting, barely moving, and it's probably the worst seat in the building. You can't see in the corners, and we're asking them to make decisions on the fly. So coaching gig is not an easy one.
No, it's not. And John's been doing it for a long time, and everyone's got a viewpoint of him in terms of his approach to the game. But the players respond, and you guys have been pretty open and honest about the process in Philly, and you guys were in a playoff spot for the majority of the season last year, and you're in the hunt this year. What is it about John Tortorella and his coaching, process that makes you feel comfortable that he's the right guy to push this program forward in Philly?
Yeah, and sometimes the perception of Torts is that he's tough on the young guys and he's not letting the young guys play, and it's actually quite the opposite. He's always the one that wants to give the young guys a chance to play and play more and put them back out there after they make mistakes. I've been really, really impressed with him as far as that goes. He has a way. He's tough. He's demanding with the players, but it's genuine, and he shares with them how much he cares about them, and he's doing that not to. It's not personal. It's not a personal vendetta against the guys. It really wants to make them the best that they can be. Sometimes you don't like it in the moment, but most players come back later and appreciate what he's done for them.
He's been hard but fair with Michkov. I mean, how special is this player? And Michkov, through his interpreter, came out with a statement the other day saying he respected Torts and has had good conversations through his interpreter with him and likes the process that he's had with him. Yeah,
it's what I've been impressed with Matvei is how he reacts to the benching, how he reacts to missing a few shifts or being challenged or called out in front of his teammates. He responds. He's got a special character in a good way. He's ultra competitive. I think when he was younger, we've heard some rumors that he was a bad teammate, but I think part of it is that he just didn't know how to channel it, didn't know how to tell his teammates that they had to work harder and work at the same level as him. So he's maturing, but really what's impressive is how he answers the bell. Already at his age, he's not afraid of the big moment. He actually welcomes the big times in a game where he can make the difference, and he really believes he's there to make a difference. So, that's not something you can teach. You have it or you don't. You're afraid of the moment or you're not. And so far, already at 19, it's impressive that he has that and feels confident enough to want to be a difference maker every game.
Danny, you've got some great young players. What do you think it takes for a team in the position like the Philadelphia Flyers to get to that next level, to be a team that contends for the playoffs and ultimately the Stanley Cup year after year? Is it for your young players to turn into star players? Is it you look at teams that are kind of fighting in that same position? Do you need more star power? What is it that you guys need?
Well, I think everybody wants more star powers. We all want the Connor McDavid and the Auston Matthews and et cetera. But the reality is those guys are extremely tough to find. There's a chance that a guy like Michkov could turn into close to a star or superstar. But otherwise, you need depth throughout your lineup. You need your young players to become really good players. Feels like we're trending in that direction, but there's still a long ways to go. I think consistency is probably one of the toughest things as a young guy, as a young player, to find and to get. And we see that. We see that on a nightly basis for us. You always have 2 or 3 guys that are not going. And to become a good team, I think that's one of the things we're going to need. It's so tough, right? You look at the teams that are stuck in the bottom of the standings. It's so tough to get out of it. That was part of why, when we talked about the rebuild, we didn't want to fall all the way down to the bottom. We wanted to stay competitive and have our young guys learn through a competitive team and a team that has a chance to win and make the playoffs because it's so tough to get out of there.
Chatting with Danny Briere, GM of the Flyers. Leafs in Philly tomorrow night playing the Flyers. The Four Nations face-off about 5 weeks away, and you've obviously got players that are going to be there. Travis Sanheim, a Canadian, will be on the Canada team. And I'm curious, we asked you off the bat, about the stress of being a GM and with your club team. How might that relate to what you expect out of the tournament? In other words, player safety, guys getting out of there healthy, but also what you hope your players experience and what they can bring back to their club team in Philly to hopefully help you guys down the stretch.
Yeah, well, for us, the exciting part is those two guys have never been part of something like that and representing their country. Both Travises. It's really exciting for our organization, the experience these guys are going to acquire, being with the best, and just for them, their mindset, realizing that now they belong with the best players in the NHL. For years, we've been hearing here in Philly, we don't have top end players, we don't have talent, we don't have top pairing defensemen. Well, you know what? When you look around the league, the guys like Sanheim and Konechny, they're not easy to find, and we feel fortunate that we have them. I'm really excited that they made the team, and I hope it helps their careers and they take another step forward to help us, get into the playoffs and become a Stanley Cup contender.
Garnet Hathaway's a guy who's plays in that gray area on the edge. He's physical. He's the type of player you want on your team. You see him play, that type of style. Do you mind it? Is it a situation? It's obviously last night he got into it with McCabe and backed it up. Is it something that Torts is fine with putting him out and putting him in every situation and not in? You just talked about a back-to-back with the Leafs here. Is it a situation where you want to be mindful of maybe retribution tomorrow?
Well, first of all, we hope that McCabe is okay. That's the most important part. I don't think anybody wishes anybody to get hurt. But it's the type, and for Garnett, he has to play that way to be effective. He has to be a guy that finishes his check and plays hard. He's always done that. I know I hated seeing him come in and bang a defenseman around, when he was in Washington and Boston. So we love having him on our team. He's a tough customer. Every team has those guys, and they bring something that is tough to find. And he makes our younger guys feel a little bit more safe out on the ice. So we really appreciate how he plays, but obviously he has to play. It's a fine line, and a few times he's crossed the line over the years, and he's well aware that he has to be careful at how far he pushes it.
Should be a fun one tomorrow night. Back-to-back, like we said, home and home. You don't see it often, so enjoy it, Danny. We really appreciate you doing this today. We'll do it again down the road. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, guys. Always a pleasure.
You got it.
Good job.
You got it. Danny Briere, GM of the Philadelphia Flyers. And good Canadian boy, Danny, as well. Played for that junior team. World Juniors in 97, who won the gold in Switzerland, I believe it was.
I never, you see different guys. One of my first roommates was Kevin Dineen, and I always kind of knew that, he would be up. He didn't sleep that much, and he would be up at 3 a.m. And then when I got up, I'd look, and he'd be writing down the drills that he liked for practice. And I'm like, this guy's going to be a coach.
Yeah.
He's going to be a coach. But Danny Briere, I never pegged him as a general manager. Well, just from you know what I mean? He just, I think he had a boatload of money that he made while he was playing.
He was a really good player.
He was really good, man.
Scored a goal. He scored a goal under the bar in Phoenix. I'll never forget it.
Dude, that guy could go bar down. Oh. God, he had this thick black blade with white tape on it, and he would rip it under the bar. It was
kind of like a Draisaitl.
Yeah.
Big blade.
Wedge shovel.
And he, that was in the old Phoenix building, where that was the basketball rink or basketball stadium or whatever. Mm-hmm. And he scored on me under the bar. I remember thinking, I felt like I had everything covered, and he just hit it I'll never forget that goal. Jeff Courtnall was right there, and I handed him a minus. Unfortunately, it was a short side goal. Probably should have had it. But he looked at me and going, how do you not have that? I'm like, he hit literally a spot, just by my ear. And he just didn't look,
I didn't think a guy, he didn't, I was like, that guy's going to be the GM. And I never thought I'd see that.
Yeah. I mean, he spent, he jumped around the league a little bit, right? He was drafted by Phoenix, started with Phoenix, then Buffalo, Philly, cup of coffee in Montreal, ended in Colorado. But I would think of them Sabres first, because remember coming out of the lockout, they had that great year, and him and Drury were like unbelievable.
Yeah, two general managers, Drury.
And they're both GMs. That's right.
They were
in the same division.
They were in Game 7 of winning. Carolina beat them in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Final.
That's right. Yeah. And then you look at it, then he went to Philly, 07-08. I'm looking at his playoff stats from 05-06 through 07-08. 18 playoff games, 16 playoff games, 17 playoff games. And then Philly went to that Cup final in 09-10. He played 23. He played a ton of playoff games over the course of 5 years.
Well, dude, I think he was on one of those Philly teams that had a series against Boston that went down 0-3 in the series. Yeah. And then in Game 7, they were down 0-3 in the game and came back and won it.
That's right. Yeah. That was that Bruins team in 09-10, and then Philly lost on the Kane OT winner in Chicago's first Cup.
That's right. Michael Leighton was in net.
Yeah, and that was Philly. And then the crazy thing is the next year, Boston beat Vancouver in the Cup final.
Yeah.
So they respond. You talk about responding. After blowing an 0-3 lead, which at that point we had never seen. The Kings did it to San Jose 2 years later.
Yeah.
Remember? But
that's right.
Prior to Boston doing it, it only happened 2 or 3 times
I remember that series? Down 0-3, and then they come back. And then in Game 7, Boston goes up 3 Cobb, and I'm like, okay, now you're really done.
Yeah.
And they won the game.
Crazy. Yeah. Danny Briere, he's
Well, and Keith Jones is the president there.
That's right, yeah.
Came out of the booth.
That's right. We'll see what they got moving forward. You mentioned it, Konechny and Sanheim both on Canada for the Four Nations face-off.
Konechny was kind of quiet last
night.
Yeah,
he was.
I think he had his A's stuff. The other
we'll see tomorrow.
Here, Morgan Frost. He's getting at least some ice time. He's
playing. Yeah, he's becoming a veteran in the league now. He's been around. He's been in Philly for a few years now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they need help offensively. He's got a lot of talent.
He does, yeah.
All right, TSN 1050 wants you to be our unofficial correspondent at the grittiest golf event of the year. Here's how you enter. Download the iHeartRadio app, create an account, and listen to TSN 1050 for at least 15 minutes straight. Once you hit 15 minutes, follow the prompts to complete our entry. Whether it's 15 minutes of First Up in the morning or 15 minutes of Overdrive in the afternoon, the more you listen, the better your chances. And on January 20th, First Up, we'll be calling one listener with a trip for 2 to the Waste Management Open in Arizona. Full details at tsn1050.ca. Can't beat that. Cannot beat that. Bring your clubs down, go to the tournament, play. Phenomenal. It's going to be great. We're getting closer to that, man. We got good golf tournaments coming up. They stay in Hawaii this weekend.
Dude, this is why I told you when I first got in here, I love the frosty weather because I know there's only going to be max 2 months of it.
Yeah, that's right.
It's only going to be around for 2 months, and then a month after that, we're teeing it.
I love it. It happens every year. I put my clubs away November, December. I haven't touched.
Yeah, you don't even think about it throughout the holidays.
Not even looking at
it. In the garage or
no,
whatever.
They're in the basement, tucked away. They're gone. I haven't even looked at them.
Don't get up and start swinging it around.
I will. Starting this week,
Dude,
I guarantee it.
The first thing I want to put in my hands is a QI
35. Yes. Well, that's a big part of it. TaylorMade starts coming out with a new line of stuff, and I'm like, seeing videos on that.
Can I try that?
They get to Kapalua in Hawaii, and the big boys show up and start playing.
And so people start, eyeing.
You just start feeling
my
like,
buddy
okay,
sent me a text
season.
where I got the itch. He's like, Morikawa's hitting the QI 35. It looks sick. And then I thought, I need to go to Vaughn.
I need to get up there too. I'm gonna break the clubs out this week. I'm gonna hit a sim. Absolutely.
Are there sims right year round?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Dude, there's a sim close to here.
There's one out by me.
Let's have a sim date one day.
Come out by me. There's a place called Golf 247 in Brooklyn.
We're going to meet here at 2 o'clock before work. There's one within half a kilometer from here.
You'll show up all crabby.
No, we'll sim it.
Before work. If somebody
I'll show you a sim.
We'll sim it with Doogie to get some footage.
There you go. Doogie, you got it. Okay, we're working this out because you're right. Now we're into January. We've got to grind through 2 months tops, and then it's go time.
All right.
Okay? Come back with our best bets. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, today's best bets powered by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. I'm on the Habs tonight. They're getting plus money at home. Listen, my concern is road trip, 1 day off, and then at the Bell Center.
Yeah.
But Vancouver's in one right now.
I think it's time tomorrow, boys, where we hit the coach happiness meter. because there could be a
Canadian coach
change.
happy.
There
Great
could be
idea.
a change in the list.
Great idea. And I'm on the over in the Panthers Avalanche game tonight. Like, I think that's a bit of a shootout. It's a high number. But
Well, yeah, the Avalanche lost 2-1 or
Yeah,
to
which
Montreal
never
the other-
happens.
That'll be there'll be some goals tonight.
never happens.
There'll be some goals.
But Wedgwood's banged up, right?
Well, yeah, did you see that?
That was weird that they let the play keep going.
Slow it down. The guy's like writhing in pain.
Yeah.
Dude, I love the refs, man, but reffing needs to be looked at. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Bednar was pissed.
Bednar was really bent out of shape.
Yeah.
Today's Best Bets, powered by FanDuel. Live same-game parlays are now available for every NHL game on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Please play responsibly, 19+, physically located in Ontario. Yeah, I think a coaching meter thing could happen. I got an arbitration cooking for Wednesday, a little 2025 outlook, because I think we still have about 2 weeks where we can do a 2025 New
I've been
Year
kind of
thing.
putting the bug in people's ear. It's no more saying Happy New Year.
Yeah, I was going to say, when do you stop? Because
Larry
somebody said
David,
that-
January 3rd.
Yeah.
It's about that time.
I'd say
where,
it's about right.
Somebody
Yeah,
said
it's
it.
right about now.
Yeah, that's enough.
But what if you haven't seen somebody?
Doesn't matter.
I think it's okay over
You
text.
say, I hope things are going well.
There you go.
Say
Hope you have
Happy
yourself
New
a
Year.
great January.
I don't mind a Happy New Year till the 10th.
Okay.
That's it.
The 10th is your
Yeah.
limit.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks to everyone behind the scenes for helping out. We appreciate it. Everyone for tuning in today. Radio, TV, podcast, web. We appreciate that. We're out of here. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy the games tonight. We're back tomorrow at
It's time for me and the players' commish to step on the gas.
big time.
4 p.m.
We'll chat then.